Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast with Ollie Rummel. Stacy Bratcher is the Chief Legal Officer of Cottage Health, one of the largest healthcare providers in California. Stacy is a true leader in the healthcare legal world with over 20 years of experience in healthcare-related law. Stacy's path to success in the legal world of healthcare started when she worked on healthcare policy in college as an intern. From there, she's held positions at law firms, colleges, and most recently, Cottage Health. She also has a podcast called The Legal Department, where she holds discussions with in-house lawyers about topics ranging from employment law to leadership and executive recruiting. Be sure to check out her show in the description. Hi, Stacy. Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast. I'm excited to have you on.
I am thrilled to be open to this conversation. Thanks so much for reaching out to me.
Of course. You've had such an inspiring career in healthcare law with more than 20 years of experience in various roles, culminating in your current role as GC of Cottage Health. So I'm super excited to dive into kind of your success story and where everything started out for you. But I do want to start with a quick icebreaker before we jump into it. So the icebreaker is, if you could do any other job or profession in the world, what would it be and why?
Wow, that's a hard one. This is going to be not obvious, but I really like heavy equipment, and I would love to drive like a dump truck or a forklift or a bulldozer. They have some experiences in Las Vegas where you can do that, and it's like on my bucket list to go there and move some dirt. So heavy equipment operator would
I
be my
love it.
backup.
I love it. It does sound like a fun job, just kind of having the power to move around heavy equipment like that.
Yeah, I worked as a temp during college, and I was a receptionist at this warehouse one time, and they let me drive the forklift around the warehouse, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. So,
Nice. Love it. So, speaking of college, I'd love to take it back to when you were at Truman State in Missouri studying English. So, I want to know, did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? Did you know you were thinking about healthcare law? What were you like in college, and what kind of compelled you to go after a legal career?
well, I had always kind of had an idea about it. My mom used to make comments to me about that I was kind of tough. I'll kind of paraphrase. She said I was tough, and so that I would be a good lawyer. I told a story on another show about how I grew up playing the game of life, and lawyer was like the next highest paid position to our career after doctor. But I really kind of committed to the role or the profession after I was in government, state government, started my senior year of college. And then I stayed on working for the governor of Missouri. And I was super young. I was, in my early 20s, looked very young, and noticed that all of the really influential people, actually, most of the people that worked in the Capitol were lawyers. They had law degrees, even if they weren't practicing. And I sort of saw that as the price of admission to a career in government or public policy. So
Interesting.
that was the catalyst.
Nice. So it was kind of like driven by your interest in politics. And so did you take a gap year between finishing undergrad and law school, or did you kind of just take the LSAT and go straight into it?
Well, this is an interesting story. I feel like my whole life and career has kind of been just driven on intuition and instincts. And so my senior year, when I was doing that internship, I had intended to go to law school the next year, and I had and not having a whole lot of career mentors or anything. I had all these different applications. I had like 5 or 7 schools that I was going to like scatter shot these applications across the country, and they just sat in my room. I'm in my apartment in Jefferson City, and I could never bring myself to turn them in. And I was like, oh, I'm going to work on these, I'm going to turn them in or whatever. And they just kind of sat with me. And so I didn't apply my senior year, and I graduated, finished my internship, and went home for the summer and then sought out about finding a job. And I looked around and I really realized that I wanted to stay working in the governor's office, and I was able to persuade them to keep me on. And so it was, I didn't really I wasn't thoughtful enough back then to call it a gap year, but that's what I did, was to spend the time, really trying to get some work experience. And then it was sort of easy, in terms of I didn't have 7 applications anymore. I had one, and I had been doing health policy work in the governor's office, and picked a law school that had a healthcare program that also happened to be in my hometown. So that's kind of
Nice.
how I settled into law school.
Love that story. So the internship turned into a full-time job, and then you sort of experimented with different types of law, and healthcare was what you landed on. So that's pretty cool. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on taking a gap year or maybe even a few years off just to explore interests or get some work experience.
I think it's really crucial, and I know you have work experience that I think is going to serve you well. I looked at a lot of my classmates that kind of went straight through, and I mean, there's something to that, to just like, if you want to be a lawyer, like, let's just put our head down and do the work and get it done. But I think that there are benefits to learning what the quote real world is, to learning, you're in sales, to learning like, hey, what are expectations around delivering something, and meeting expectations that are not, individual get a grade, learning how business is done. Because, in law school, you'll read a lot of cases and it's very academic. But when you work as a lawyer, it's not just, this is the black and white letter law of, the land. It's how does this law apply to life and to business. So I'm a strong advocate, supporter of people that take some time off, because I think it's going to make you a better student, and I think it'll make you a better lawyer.
That's awesome to hear. And that's exactly why I took time off.
That's
I'm kidding.
good. That's good. I think it'll serve
Yes.
you.
Thanks. So you started your program at St. Louis University in healthcare law, and what was the law school experience like? Did you enjoy it first and foremost, and was it challenging for you academically?
Oh, it was super challenging. And it was, and I don't know if this will be your experience, if it's still this way, but it felt like being an adult and going back to high school. Like, you're in this very, kind of tight section. When I was there, they put you in a section, and you did all the same classes at your first year with the same people. You had a locker, and, it was, sometime a little clicky. There was also, there's a performance aspect to law school where, you um, kind of get in you realize, you think that the expectation of success is that you're performing well in class, that like you're answering the questions, that you're looking smart in front of your colleagues. But guess what? You don't get graded on how you answer questions in class. And so that was a little, I kind of learned that the hard way. That, it wasn't, yes, it's good to be prepared. And that Socratic method is teaching you how to think. And it's also conditioning you to be prepared in class. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to one test for that semester and how well you write the exam. So, um, I got better at that after the first semester.
Yeah. So would you say that's kind of your advice for folks in law school is maybe to focus less on the performance aspects and just focus more on academics?
Yeah, I think yes. It does not matter. And again, the kind of the social pressure of like not wanting to look dumb, wanting to, have the answer, and all of that is like great. Like, so you get immediate, feedback on whether you're smart or not. But who cares? Your grades at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, it's anonymous. So I mean, people figure out who's at the top of the class, but um, I think, and I we talked about you're going to ask a question about like what would I tell my younger self, it would have been like who cares? Like run your race.
Hmm.
Spend time learning the material in the way that you need to learn the material, not like stressing out about do I know the case holding and what's the procedural posture of XYZ case? Who cares?
Yeah, I love it. And so, kind of just transitioning off of that, you obviously got a an offer from the nation's largest healthcare firm, Hooper Lundy and Bookman. So, maybe can you talk about some of the things you did, maybe other than academics, that helped you land a position like this? Maybe in terms of interviews, networking, reaching out to folks. What did that look like?
Well, a couple of, I think the people say you've got to be lucky and good. So the luck part was that I graduated kind of during the first internet boom, and there was a big need for lawyers. And so there was just, it was a good market. You'll find this, as the economy ebbs and flows, there are better markets for lawyers coming out of school.
Hmm.
So that's a luck part. What I did to make myself good was that I, throughout law school, tried to have clinical experiences or internships that gave me real world experience. So I interned at the US Attorney's Office. I interned at a big health system. I interned with a judge. So I did, I had kind of well rounded experience. That really, I think, set me apart. But then the other thing I did that was smart was I looked outside my immediate market. So I went to school in St. Louis. It's a, you know, pretty saturated for healthcare because that's a strong program and a lot of people stay in town. I didn't have any offers locally in St. Louis. I had offers all over the country, DC, Atlanta, New York, and LA, but I was like, second fiddle in my hometown. So part of it is, when you get to the point of looking for a job, think broader than just like what's right in front of you would be the advice.
Gotcha. So that was that your first time in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I went for the interview. That was it. And
Wow.
my family thought I was kind of crazy to be like, you're moving to California. And not only are you moving to California, but you're moving to LA. Like, what?
Well, now you're in the Central Coast, right? I think you're in Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're kind of avoiding the traffic, but getting the best of California, I think.
Yeah, it's
So
lovely up here.
nice. So you did 5 years as an associate there, and I'd love to hear a little more about that stint. So Hooper, Lundy, and Bookman, if I'm not mistaken, is about 100 plus attorneys, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Could be. It was smaller when I was there. I think we had three offices, and then in the last, 15 years, they've expanded and they've got offices all over the country. So that could be right.
Gotcha. And what did the work look like when you first started? Was it overwhelming? Did you enjoy it? What was the day to day like?
Well, it was a mix. There was, what one thing the firm did really well, and I'm hoping they still do this, is to rotate associates through the different departments. So, you're fresh out of law school, you don't really know what being a lawyer is or what the legal work that people pay you for is. So I got to do different things. So that kept it interesting. The day to day, I mean, I think it is somewhat of a harsh reality. I didn't, as I mentioned in my summers, I never worked at a law firm, which would have been probably a good idea to have a sense of what this job's going to be like, because and again, you're coming from sales, so you know about productivity. When you work in a law firm, it is about billing hours. It's about delivering kind of the perfect work product for, the client and in a way that the firm can get reimbursed for your professional services. And so that pressure around delivering where you're still learning, like when you're fresh out of law school, even coming out with a specialty like I had, still it was a mystery, like what are people paying me for? So there's a learning curve to actually being a lawyer.
You're talking about understanding like the commercials of working at a law firm.
I'm sorry, the commercials.
Yeah, I guess, are you talking about just kind of understanding how billing hours translate into revenue for the firm and like navigating that?
No, it just not necessarily how it works, but for example, what am I able to bill? I'm flat footed. I'm just learning about this privacy issue. I've never even heard of HIPAA, let's just say, when I'm, right out of law school. How am I able to bill the client as I'm getting up to speed on kind of the basics? Am I able to bill when it takes me, however many hours to do a draft? Like that whole thing where you're moving from being somebody who was in an educational environment to somebody who is being paid to provide professional services where you're still like learning the rules of the road. I did litigation and, you know, the rules of court were new to me. There's local rules. So courts, each district may have their own rules and each courtroom may have their own rules. I had no framework of that. And I had, complaints or other legal filings that were bounced, came back a couple times. I'm able to bill the client for the fact that I made mistakes because I had no idea what I was doing? I mean, there's just you're learning the job on the job.
Hmm.
Because at least I didn't feel like law school necessarily prepared me to be a practicing attorney.
Hmm. I think that's like from what I understand, so either it's kind of a pro and a con is that it's such a steep learning curve and you're able to learn so quickly. And that's why that environment can be really good for someone that's early in their career. But I am curious, like how long did it take you before it felt like, okay, I feel like I'm in a state of flow now? Or maybe you didn't get to that point, but how long did it take before you felt you got a little bit more used to kind of the day to day of working at the firm?
I would bet it was a year and a half or 2 years. I mean, we're going back in time, but yeah, it was a couple years, and also you didn't necessarily work on the same thing twice. Again, I'm rotating through different departments, so I might be doing a transactional matter, or I might be, digging through the Federal Register trying to figure out what Medicare rules are. And so, yeah, it took a little bit of time to get my feet under me.
Gotcha. Nice. It sounds like the rotational program was really beneficial. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'd agree. I'd agree.
So maybe before we move on to your next position, I'd like to just kind of ask you, broadly speaking, I mean, what is some advice you'd give to folks that are earlier in their careers? They just graduated, they're associates, they're trying to maybe move up in a firm like the one you were at.
Well, I think, at a macro level, I think it's important throughout your career to check in with yourself and make sure whatever you're doing because you want to do it and you like it, not because you're trying to reach some, brass ring or achieve something. I think we can get trapped in this, and I think law school reinforces this actually, that you're supposed to be on law review, you're supposed to get good grades, you're supposed to do moot court, you're supposed to get a clerkship, all these must do's. And you don't want to be 5 or 10 years into your career and look back and be like, well, I didn't want to do this in the first place. you know so, and there are the economic, someone else asked me this recently, like there's economic realities. I mean, I came out of law school with a lot of debt, and
Mm,
so there was just the, real life that, I had to eat. I had to pay my law school loans. And so, you do jobs for various different reasons, and paying the bills is one of those.
gotcha. Love it. So I'd love to talk about the transition from your firm to working at USC. Can I ask how that happened?
Yeah, so this is a good, I tell the story. I've told the story a couple times. I mean, um, networking is really crucial for lawyers, for everybody. I'm a huge proponent of building relationships, and both being a beneficiary of relationships and benefiting others, being a benefactor, as Michael Melcher calls it. So I one day, and we talked about, I came from government, and I had had so much job satisfaction working in state government. And when I got into the law firm, I don't know what I was expecting, but I just didn't have, I had kind of been in love with my job and I just wasn't. And I had gone to lunch or coffee with a friend who had left my firm and was at a new firm, and we were just talking about, like, is this what it is? Is this what life's going to be like? And I said, I really would like to be working someplace that's more mission driven, like that's something that is bigger than just billing hours. And she said, well, it's funny, like I just got an email from one of the partners in the firm. USC is looking for a healthcare attorney. Do you think you'd be interested? And I was like, yeah, send it over. And so I applied, and it was really interesting because the person who had the healthcare job before I got there was leaving to go back to a law firm. And that really got my attention. I was like, something isn't right here. But it was just a better fit for me. And so was just lucky enough to have had a fit, and was there for a good chunk of my career.
Definitely. Did you ever figure out why that person went back to a law firm?
Well, I kicked the tires on that quite a bit. And, this is an important, I have a podcast for targeting in-house lawyers called The Legal Department. And we do talk a lot about the difference between in-house counsel's practice and outside law firm practice. And outside counsel, you have the luxury of learning and spending a lot of time going deep on issues. And this person who I succeeded at USC was somebody who liked writing briefs, who liked being a litigator, who liked those court rules I talked about. She wanted to go deep on issues. And so it truly was just not what she wanted to do. So I believe me, I asked that question any number of ways because it just did not fit with my view of the world.
Love it. That makes a lot of sense, actually. You went out with someone and you found out that there was this open role and you applied and you got it, which really does speak to the power of networking. And you have an awesome podcast episode actually talking about the power of networking, and this is kind of a good anecdote to that as to why maybe going out to that lunch or going out to that happy hour can actually result in a lot of positive things. So, can you maybe touch on that about how important it is just overall networking throughout your whole career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of an evangelist and I try to call it network building because people kind of cringe if you say networking, even though it's like, it's what we all do. But we can't do anything. You can't get anything done in life without other people. And likewise, you are a resource for other people in ways you may not even imagine. It might be, the best, or your kid's going to a camp that a friend's kid would benefit. I just was met with a friend over the weekend, and they were told me about a scholarship program for another friend that where another friend's kid goes to school. That it's just fortuitous how we need to share information and resources with one another. And the way that you do that is by knowing people. And, especially for lawyers, especially for in-house lawyers, you need to know people. You need to know who to call about, an intellectual property issue, an insurance issue, the company litigation. You need to know, you need to have resources. And likewise, you need to be a resource to others. I just really feel like it's table stakes is a term that's overused, but it really, I feel like is something that's fundamental to all professionals.
Got it. Yeah, 100%. And it's just important to be uncomfortable and put yourself out there to sort of find those opportunities, but it could also come from, just friends and stuff like that. So that's super important. Stacy, let's dive into your time at USC. You spent almost 15 years there and had many promotions, which is really impressive. So maybe we can just start with your first 3 or 4 years there as university counsel, and you can talk about the work you did there and then the types of things you did to put yourself in a position to get promoted.
Well, I was recruited as the lawyer to the medical school, and had worked a little bit with doctors, but not like I did when I was working for the school. So my office was down the hall from the dean of the medical school, and I was part of their senior leadership team, which again, I have no experience in this. I'm like fresh out of a law firm. Um, and, it was the first job was a very exciting time at the university. There was a new president and there was a lot of commitment to healthcare and growing healthcare. And my big break was we purchased two hospitals from Tenant Healthcare, and I was the number two person on the deal and went through due diligence, got a lot of exposure to the senior leadership and a little bit to the board of trustees. And once the hospitals became part of the university, um, we needed a lawyer to lead a new healthcare legal team, and it was just sort of natural. I had a really good relationship with the general counsel, and I had proven myself through the deal and my other work for the school, and it really just kind of worked out, let's just say. But it's kind of right place, right time, and doing a good job.
Amazing. I mean, I'm sure you worked very hard as well. And yeah, a little bit of luck also probably helped, but that's an awesome story. So then you became managing attorney of the healthcare legal team. And so I'd love to hear more about how your role changed as you became the associate general counsel.
It was it just kind of centralized all the work under all the healthcare work in one place. And what was fun about that job was we were building a new team, so I got to recruit people for the first time. It was the first time I had management responsibility. We did some other deals when I had that role. It's funny, as I was preparing to get this role at Cottage, like I work with an executive coach, and he had asked me, like, well, if you think about when you were you most happy at work, and it was when I was the AGC for health. It's kind of funny to think about that now because that was quite a while ago, but I was essentially the general counsel for the healthcare enterprise at that point. So,
Nice. And how was it your first time managing folks?
I talk a lot about this on the podcast, that was a growth opportunity for me. I think you see in a law firm not the best management practices. Lawyers, I again, one girl's experience, try to get the work done, and don't really worry about how people feel about it. And so, early on, there was opportunity for improvement, and I spent a lot of time trying to focus on leadership, getting feedback. I got a coach. I asked to have a coach, and have kind of made it a priority of mine to always be continuing to learn and develop those skills.
I love it. So was it fair to say your work shifted a little more from sort of core legal work to more management and leadership and extracurriculars?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Much more
Nice.
management.
Nice. And yeah, I mean the promotions are just really impressive. So I mean, what else can you say about, obviously you went to the next step was deputy general counsel and then finally vice president and managing general counsel.
Mhm.
I mean, what is there anything else you can talk about in terms of exposing yourself to the decision team, the leadership team that was responsible for promoting folks internally or making your work visible, things like that, that really helped you sort of stand out and move up?
I mean, I wish I could say that it had been somewhat deliberate. I really was very well positioned. The general counsel who I worked under for most of my time there was very well, she was in the president's cabinet, and she was very generous with opportunities.
Amazing.
And that's really informed my leadership. I think sometimes lawyers, people can get very proprietary and be like hoard opportunities, and my boss did not do that. She was very, very generous with me, and so when there were opportunities, she would put me forward for them. I did also, for the when I got the VP title, is something that I sort of asked for. Like, we kind of negotiated that, but for the most part, it was, I was in the right place at the right time with somebody who was really a sponsor of mine and champion.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, that's advice I've heard before is when you first go to a firm is finding a mentor, finding a champion, because it's so hard to get things done without someone that kind of has your back. So that's awesome. I mean, you speak really highly of everyone there, and it sounds like you had a fantastic experience at USC.
Yes, it was, for most of it, it was really great. And I still have, I mean, it's like home. You know, I didn't go to school there, but I'm definitely always wearing the cardinal and gold. And, you know, it's a place that I'm going to be connected to forever. So it was a
Nice.
great experience.
I love it. And I gotta ask, were you commuting from like the Valley or Santa Barbara to
Not
USC, or were you?
No, I moved to Santa Barbara for this job that I have now. I did, you know, live in different. Well, you're in Southern California, you know, it just try as you might. Very few people live close to work, so there was always a commute component, which you know that your car becomes your office, right? You do some calls and get other work
Mm.
done. Listen to podcasts like the legal department.
Love it. Yeah. Love your podcast. And yeah,
Thank
we can
you.
definitely, I would love to hear more about that when we end our episode here. But yeah, anything else you can share? I mean, also, I guess, Stacy, how many people were you managing at your peak at USC?
Well, when I was managing GC, I was over the entire legal department. There were 15 lawyers. I don't remember the number of support staff. Let's just say it was 9. And then I over also was in charge of risk management and insurance, and that was another 4 or 5 people.
Wow, it sounds super dynamic and multifaceted. So that is pretty cool. I love just hearing your transition from like basically just doing legal work to like full-time management is really awesome to
Mhm.
hear.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, you don't necessarily get trained for it. So I guess my hot tip for everybody is to, you know, if it's management is something that you see in your future, you need to invest time in learning that, reading, going to classes, or, you know, like I did, hiring a coach.
Nice. Love it. And yeah, I'd love to ask you about your transition to Cottage Health. How did that happen?
It's a funny story. So, you know, there was a lot of transition at the university, led through a very challenging time involving several black swans that landed at the same time, and there was a lot of leadership transition. And I, you know, as impressive as it sounds to be, you know, I was the general counsel essentially. It was not the job that I wanted, and I don't want to sound um, ungrateful or that I didn't appreciate the opportunity. But as we talked about my early career, I've been committed to healthcare for 20 plus years, and that's always been where I wanted to spend my time. And so when I was promoted, I was over also the higher ed part of the business. And it was during the Varsity Blues scandal. There continues to be a lot of issues on college campuses around campus sexual assault. So it was not. I say I didn't go to law school to deal with football and fraternities. Like it wasn't a passion area for me. And I was kind of just frankly worn out by the scandal and all of the work that went into that, and then the leadership transition was also hard for me. So
Totally fair.
yeah, my husband and we'd spent a lot of time in Santa Barbara. We were up here for New Year's of 2020, and we were on a beach walk. This is the God's truth, and back to my intuition, which I already said earlier. We were
Yeah.
on a beach walk, and I said, I'd love to live up here, but there's no jobs unless Cottage Health ever called me. And in February, I had a call from a recruiter. So,
Wow.
like, I don't, it was just meant to be. I got to say though, I don't know that without the COVID interruption and um, you know, the time to be at home, working from home, not driving, not commuting, not all of that, I don't know that I would have been as open to pursuing it. So, That's kind of how I landed up here.
Yeah, because it was September 2020, right? So it was like right before or at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, they called me in February of 2020. So yeah.
So was it in person or remote?
The interview process was a mix of in person and remote. And what was a little unusual was that, you know, most of the times when you're recruited, there's like a social component. There's lunches and dinners, and, because, when you're part of, especially the general counsel, they want to know that you fit with the team. And we didn't get to do any of that. So that was a little, I was up here, I was able to interview in a mask,
Yeah.
like it was sort of weird. But then when I started, we were working in the office. I tell people there's infectious disease in hospitals all the time, not just during pandemic. But it was weird because for the most part, our meetings were on Zoom, even though I was in the hospital. So.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to ask a little bit more about the executive recruiting process because that's really fascinating to me because I'm sure it's much different from, I guess, an associate position or something else. Just like you said, they need to make sure you're a culture fit. They want to meet with you in person. Like, what does an executive hiring process look like?
Well, it depends how the jobs like get on your radar. Like it depends like if you're out there shaking the trees or if you get called by a recruiter or, former colleagues. That's happened. I've called former colleagues, that I thought would be a good fit. But, typically like the technical skills for executive level work are pretty much like those are just the requirements. That's the price of entry. They want a lawyer. They want a healthcare lawyer. Okay, so I need to have worked in a hospital before or know about health systems. Um, but they're also looking for other things that, again, I don't know are taught in law school, which are, executive presence,
Mm,
collaboration, how to, a lot of what I do is board related. So
financial
presenting,
aspects?
certainly like you're expected, I think for I would say this for outside counsel too. You need to understand financial statements. Like it's not, again, not part of law school. Spend some time learning that because if you're doing any kind of business, advising business or business litigation, like knowing your way around a financial statement is definitely a requirement.
Gotcha.
So, but they're more, again, like being an executive or being a member of an executive team, the expectations are more around collaboration, partnership, working as a team, which, like I said, is not in my experience was not how law school teaches you. It's more of a
Mm,
competitive environment. So,
gotcha. Awesome. Well, I mean, congrats on that transition to college. I know it's been over 3 years now, but it sounds like something you really wanted to do, and you sound really happy to be there. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to lead the legal team of sort of one of the biggest healthcare providers in California?
well, it's first thing, it is a great job, and I'm the first in-house lawyer here, so I was building a team, which I will say, you sort of take for granted. You need to have. I've felt like you need to have this comparison. You need to have to appreciate what you have. You need to be able to compare it with with what you don't have. And so I really have appreciated, kind of the infrastructure and the team that I had when I was at the university. But have gotten a lot of support and resources here and have built a great team. I'm really proud of all of our folks on my team, and just it's an embarrassment of riches to have the smart, experienced people that I have working with me.
I love it. So you actually built the team from the ground up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And is that a lot of sort of reaching out to folks you've worked with in the past?
Um, as I look through, I mean, yes, I did try to recruit a couple people that I worked with before, but for the most part, everybody's fresh. Everyone's new to me. So,
Gotcha. Nice. Awesome, Stacy. Well, this was a fantastic interview. I'd love to just ask you, final questions about like looking back on your career. It sounds like you had a lot of success and got like exactly sort of what you wanted, which is really amazing. I mean, you kind of just manifested every role that you wanted, which is amazing. But yeah, what looking back on that, I mean, it sounds like you found your niche and you've honed in on it and focused and put in a lot of good hard work and networked. What looking back on it, is there any like anecdotal advice you'd give to folks that want to follow a similar path?
Again, I kind of mentioned this earlier. It's really figuring out what you do want. And I know it sounds like, oh, that's so easy. Like, of course, I just want a job. I want this title. I want to make this money. But really doing it, it's harder than that. Like thinking about what you really want. What do you enjoy? I try to always reflect on days when the day went by quickly. What happened? What was I doing? And do more of that on days where I struggled or like wasn't as appreciative of what I had, what was happening. And then, build off of that and try to find things that you enjoy. Because I think that when you match enthusiasm, passion with skills and a need in the market, like you've got everything you need to succeed.
Amazing. The power of reflection and just kind of going after it when you know you want something else. I love it.
Yeah.
So awesome. And you have a podcast that is really fun and great to listen to, and that you're passionate about, the legal department. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit before we end.
Oh, thanks so much for the opportunity to plug the show. Yeah, one of the things about I realized in retrospect in taking this job with a smaller team was that I really love professional development and I love helping people develop in their careers. And I didn't find as much opportunity to do that here because I have a smaller team and we're all sort of all hands on deck. Although I am invested in them. I do love them. I do support them. And so I wanted to kind of do something that I consider kind of mentoring at scale. So thinking through issues that I wanted to learn about, things I thought other in-house lawyers would want to know about. I kind of set out on developing this. It's not a curriculum, but topical areas that I thought people would care about. And so every week, legal department is out and talk to another in-house leader, outside counsel, authors, coaches, executives. So I really enjoy it, and I appreciate you listening from time to time, and really, that's how we connected. And so I just want to
Yeah.
commend you for being a good networker, network builder, because I think that's going to come
Yeah.
in handy for you as you continue your legal career.
Thanks so much. And my favorite episode is Seven Things I Did to Become a General Counsel with Joe Scholl. And that's about someone that was committed to becoming the GC of a public company. And he walked around with a note in his pocket that he would become a GC by the age of 40. So I really enjoyed that episode.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yeah, it's the most popular, and Joe's great. He's another great connection that I have through the show. So grateful for that.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Stacy.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.